What if the most powerful supplements for women's health has been hiding in plain sight on the men's side of the gym? Sarah, ni-
Hello.
nice to see you.
You as well.
Today we're talking about creatine. I'm really excited about this topic, actually.
Yeah.
I remember it from the 90s, actually. It was sort of like a
Yeah.
bodybuilder's secret weapon. But before we go there, what are your plans this weekend? Anything exciting coming up?
Nothing. Just kidding. Yes, I have some international travel coming up, birthday
Nice.
celebrations, all the things.
Where are you going to celebrate?
Paris.
Nice. Have you been
Yes.
before?
Never,
Oh,
never, never.
it's such a lovely place. I lived there for many years. I'm really fond of Paris and it's
I can't wait.
wonderful.
I
Uh,
can't wait. I can't wait to be sweating and walking around. I love walkable cities. So for me, it's like,
it's
I
very
just want to
walkable.
walk.
It really is. So you can take a bike. I think the weather is really warm right now. And lots of places don't have AC.
Yes, I love it. I hate air conditioning.
And well, I think you will start loving it, to be honest, again, once you've been through a nice Parisian summer. But have the best time there. But there's
Thank
so much
you.
to talk about. And before we get going, have obviously the best trip ever. But creatine, I think it's such an interesting topic because creatine is having a real renaissance right now. I
Yes.
still remember creatine from my gym days in the 90s where they had like load days and then and it was about like building more muscle, but it was all about water retention. That was my understanding at the
Yeah.
time. So it wasn't like real muscle you're building, it was all fake muscle. I mean, that was really like the way people thought about it, but it was a great way of like
Yeah.
having a quick impact on your physique actually. But it turns out, fast forward a few decades, here we are again. It's been around for a long, long time, and it's probably one of the biggest and talked about supplements at the moment. We find it everywhere. We find it, obviously all over social media. There are gummies now, there are powders. But let's start with the basics here. What is creatine?
I'm glad you asked. Creatine is a peptide. So it's made up of three amino acids. I believe it's glycine, arginine, and methionine.
Okay, and I know you love peptides. We spoke about that on
Yes.
a prior
Well, yes,
podcast.
for me.
So that must be a big one. Do you take creatine yourself or not? I'm just curious.
So it's interesting. I kind of have a similar journey with creatine as you. I started before or while I was becoming a dietitian, I actually worked in the vitamin shop. And I remember, so that's like 15, 20 years ago. And creatine was one that people used to come in for all the time. And I was like, yeah, it helps you like grow muscles. And it was very masculine. And
Hmm.
I was so delighted to really dive into this and see it kind of more presented in a benefit and like how it can benefit females. And so actually when I come back from my trip, I'm going to start taking it because I was just so delighted by all the research.
Yeah, well, we'll dive into the research in a second, but what does it do actually? Like, how does it work? And like, so we spoke about what creatine is, but like, what does it do?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, it's made up of those three amino acids, and our bodies make a small amount of it. So we can kind of create a little bit of creatine, but we primarily need it from exogenous or dietary sources. So it's important that we do get some sources of creatine because our body takes in those amino acids, changes it into something called GAA, which is used by our kidneys and our livers and also our brain. So it has a really important impact on our metabolic health beyond muscles. Muscles is very important for as well because it promotes muscle development. And that's what we'll look at in the research. But also, there's this larger link now to brain health.
Yeah, and I think like we always like to have a bit of history here as well. I think there's nothing more fascinating. It has actually been around or has been discovered. Can you guess the year?
The 1900s?
Correct. 1832 it was discovered by a
Ah,
French scientist, which is perfectly like, perfect timing. You're going to France
great, great.
this weekend. So by a French scientist named Michel Eugène Chevreul. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who isolated it from meat. And so it has been around for almost 200 years, believe it or not. That's incredible. Like, that is,
Yes.
it has been around for a long time. And like, as you mentioned earlier, there was definitely this trend in the 90s towards like bulking up with the help of creatine. Um, and here we're suddenly discovering all these additional health benefits, including brain health and your energy, etc. Um, and why do you think there's this real renaissance of creatine? Because it has been around for so long, and suddenly it seems to have entered a whole new phase, and it really is the talk of town. What do you think is? I'm always fascinated what drives these trends. I have one hypothesis, but I want to understand what do you think is happening here?
I mean, I think because it's such a well-researched supplement, like there's so much good studies on it, and for a long period of time, like it doesn't feel like it's very like, I mean, it's trending, but it doesn't feel trendy. So I
Yeah.
think that kind of helps people anchor into like, wow, there's decades of research and people using this product to show these benefits. And now we're layering it and looking at it in the context of women, which I think is giving it a whole new kind of layer of discussion, because it's not just like the same, like you and I had the same kind of connotation or
Yeah.
like thought of it. It was like, oh yeah, it's for bros in the gym or people that want to like get swole. It's like, no, there's so many important things that it does metabolically in our bodies. And
Yeah.
again, that layer for women is really like when we put it in the lens of women, all of a sudden it becomes a new exciting topic of conversation.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I got a bit suspicious when I saw the trend suddenly, and I was like, "Oh, is there like a creatine lobby out there who is, dominating the world of creatine and who's actually promoting this?" And that happens sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it in many industries, and it's always good to follow the money on like who sponsors the actual research. But to my delight, there wasn't such a thing as like one player being behind all these studies. There are a few companies that make it. It's mainly made in either Germany or China, interesting enough. Just a sort of like fun fact on the side. But there isn't the creatine lobby, I think, that is sort of like driving all of this research. And to your point, it has been around for so long. It's just like that people are digging into what's been out there for a long time. And then, as I said earlier, it was really hiding in plain sight. So I was curious though, and I was slightly suspicious, I must say, but I haven't found like the smoking gun somewhere. So I will
Still
say,
looking.
like, I will keep looking, but I don't think there's such a thing. But it's also, I do think, from moving creatine from the world of bodybuilders more into the mainstream and specifically moving it also to more of a female consumer.
Yeah.
I think a few things have happened. It's like I think our body ideals have changed over time as well, right? Where strength
Yeah.
is the new skinny, if you will, right? Like being strong and building muscle and being thoughtful about like longevity, protecting your bone health with more muscle health,
Yeah.
etc. So I think all these things in combination, plus like suddenly having 50% of the population being really interested in this product as well, has led to this moment. So I think it's really interesting. And where does actually creatine come from? Do you know anything how it's made, where it comes from, how it is produced?
Well, I mean, it's derived, like you said, the first one was derived from meat, but it's a combination of amino acids. So I'm not sure exactly how those are synthetically derived, but I would imagine it's the creatine monohydrate that I've seen be the most well researched, and how that's isolated probably goes back to however you're isolating amino acids.
Okay. And then you mentioned you're interested yourself on taking it. So, bigger question,
Yeah.
why take creatine?
Yeah. Well, for me, I was very interested. It's it's fascinating. So kind of going back to my preconceived notion of it and then kind of digging back into the updated research, it's one of the only things I've seen actually get less complicated as it's been more research. Because when we looked at it previously, there was a lot of information about loading with creatine and cycling creatine, and it was very complicated in that capacity. And then with that, it came with more side effects. So I think initially when I was learning about creatine, I was like, that's not for me. I don't want to cycle and load and do all of that. But now what they're finding is that it's actually a smaller dose of creatine every single day is having these health benefits. So
Hmm.
anything that's less complicated, I am like all for. Um, and it just seems like, again, the research that I was looking at was really exciting around just preserving muscle mass. So as a woman who's exercising and moving my body, and I have been more cardio driven in my life, to now be in a place where I want to build more muscle, I'm like, yeah, I want to preserve and keep muscle mass on because I've had a historically hard time doing that. And then also it has the cognitive benefits. It helps with sleep. It helps with bone density, because if you can have more muscle mass, you're going to have stronger bones. So for me, as a woman who's just turning 40, I think it's a really valuable addition. And then also there's a lot more research now with perimenopause and menopause showing that it can have positive benefits there as well. So I'm like, this is a beautiful win-win supplement.
And how much creatine do you recommend someone takes on a daily basis?
I've seen kind of a bunch of different recommendations, but generally what I see repeated with um, the highest efficacy is 5 grams a day. And it doesn't actually matter when you take it. You don't have to necessarily take it right before a workout. If you're taking it consistently, that has also shown to be effective.
And you spoke about the science earlier. Was there one area where you thought the science was really the most promising, and was it across the board? Because there's so many benefits. Like there's obviously, bone health, as you mentioned that, muscle mass, cognitive benefits. I mean, it seems very, very broad. Um, what's your perspective around the science and how solid it is, across these different areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really solid. Again, like this is why I'm really leaning into wanting to take it because, and to get my husband on it as well, because he's very active. And there's just, for again, as you're building muscle in an active routine, aging, longevity, like you mentioned, really, really important. And then it has benefits on testosterone as well. So to have higher levels of testosterone for a man as he's aging is really beautiful and beneficial. So I've seen really good research kind of across the board. Primarily, there was a lot with putting on additional muscle mass, but now they're showing cognitive benefits. There was a study done where they deprived people of sleep and found that the ones that took creatine performed better even in a sleep deprived state on these tests that they were giving them than the people that weren't taking creatine. So I just thought it was fascinating to see it used in these different modalities and really showcase that it has benefits.
And how about side effects? You mentioned, for example, that it raises testosterone levels for men.
Yeah.
Actually, I looked at a study there, and because there was a concern that too much creatine may cause hair loss as a result of the hormonal change, basically. But the good news is it didn't seem to have any impact whatsoever. Of course, it always comes down to dosages, but like with a typical dose, there wasn't any concern about it. Were there any other side effects that you thought are worth mentioning?
Well, bloating and cramping from like a GI perspective seem to be the ones that are more common, but that was when you're doing at a higher dose, like 20 grams a day or cycling or bulking or all of that. That's when we typically would see more of this like water retention and digestive impact. But at that 5 gram amount, I haven't seen a lot of studies to say that there are negative side effects, except in the world of kidney issues. Like if you have compromised kidney function, then it's definitely something you want to
Yeah.
check your doctor with, just because it does get processed through the kidneys and the liver as well. So it is something we don't want to just be like, oh my God, it's the best thing in the world. It still is a supplement. It still is something you're taking externally. So just do the due diligence to check in with your doctor anytime. I mean, I typically say that anytime you're starting a new supplement routine is to
Yeah.
just make sure that it's appropriate for your body.
Yeah, 100%. And the side effects that, anything you do, always pay attention to your body. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. How about the cognitive benefits of creatine? Because that's obviously like, we started in the world of muscle health, if you will, or muscle building. And then we're like now moving on to cognitive benefits. I was really intrigued by the connection between creatine and its effect of your cognitive well-being. Can you unpack that a little
Yeah.
bit for me? Because I
Yeah.
was trying to connect the dots here and I couldn't really.
Yeah. So since it is just promoting the brain health and it's giving you the amino acids that you need for metabolism and metabolic function in the brain, there are studies that have looked at memory and performance and showing that it enhances memory, such as like with the sleep deprived study, but also looking in elderly populations, which I hate that word. I'm like elderly. It
Well,
just
like
feels so
I
like,
think I'm
is there a
considered now an
number?
elderly population at this stage. What does it mean to be an elderly
I was
population?
looking, I was digging, like when they use this term, I was like, but is there a number for that? Or it's just elderly populate? Like, I don't know. But anyway, people that are dealing with memory loss or changes in their brain health, they're finding that there are cognitive benefits. and enhancing memory for aging people. I know we're all aging. I was like, I just can't use the term elderly. It feels so.
Well, it is interesting. Like we're based in Los Angeles, and to be more precise, in Hollywood. I feel like anybody above 21 is considered an elderly population here. But going back to like more serious, to the more serious part of the conversation, you mentioned actually elderly populations, and actually, again, there's another benefit, which is longevity, and
Mhm.
longevity means so many things to so many people. But let's think about it as like healthy aging, if you will. Like, so not living longer, but living like better, if you will, at
Yeah.
like an advanced age. How can creatine help here?
So it's all kind of like domino effect, right? Like we get to the foundations of health and wellness. So if you are able to preserve better muscle mass, that's going to have a positive impact on bone health, which
Yeah.
is going to prevent falls and aches and pains and shifts and changes in your body as drastically. So like you don't, I just think of this for me as a woman, like I don't want to get into a point in my body where I can't move and I'm just like wasting away. I want to preserve muscle mass and keep my body metabolically active. Like that's a big goal for me personally. And so if we have more muscle mass, we're able to do that. If we sleep better, we're
Yeah.
able to work out better. We're able to optimize our energy levels, build more muscle. So it's all kind of like this domino effect in benefits. And then also memory and being able to think more clearly is just gonna be nice, right?
Well, what
Like
it
that feels
sounds,
like a good thing.
it sounds like creatine is for everyone, really. Is there anyone you would say that who shouldn't take creatine
Yeah,
apart
I
from?
mean, any like going back to anybody with kidney issues, renal
Yeah.
issues, dialysis, like I would avoid that because we don't want to put additional strain on the kidneys having to process those additional amino acids. Um, it's going to be like severe digestive issues could be challenging to actually extract and pull those amino acids out if you have liver dysfunction. So those are things where I would just be again check with your doctor and make sure that it's an appropriate or your dietitian check and see if it's an appropriate addition to make to your diet.
That's super helpful. Well, look, I learned again so much about creatine today. Thank you for that. And I think it's a really good segue. You mentioned the word appropriate. Let's talk about our well yeses and well nos for this week. Speaking of appropriate, let me start with an inappropriate one. If the people, I think it's hilarious. It's basically free balling in sunlight for men. So to increase your testosterone levels, there seems to be a lot of like momentum around like going, all out and during sunbathing. So exposing your genitals to sunlight seems to be a big trend right now. I looked at the science. I think there's a higher risk of sunburn than raising your hormonal levels. So that sounds extremely painful to me, and that's my well no for the week.
Okay, great.
And the other one is a bit controversial as well, which is like hilarious. You know how things are like going again, the pendulum seems to swing from one end to the other. Nicotine patches seem to have a really big comeback right now. Obviously, nicotine is a stimulant, right? And it can help you focus, for example, it curbs your appetite, etc. But within the wellness world, nicotine patches are having a huge comeback. Now, I understand why people do it. I'm just a little bit concerned about the addictiveness of it because it's highly addictive as an as a supplement, if you will, in this case. So I would try to find maybe other ways that stimulate you outside of nicotine patches. These are my well knows. I have two well knows. No, typically I try to find a well yes, but this week is well no no no. How about yourself, Sarah?
Well, I'll start with a well, yes.
Okay.
The Whoop band. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yep.
That's definitely for me a well, yes. I'm a huge advocate of understanding your internal biology. We've talked a lot about, like optimizing muscle building. The Whoop band is really good activity tracker, monitor, heart rate variability tracker. So it's a great addition if you're trying to be more active and build your muscle mass and preserve bone density. That's definitely a well, yes. And then my well no would be this concept that I've seen called raw dogging creatine, which is
That sounds again very inappropriate. Tell me more
it's
about
very
raw
inappropriate.
dogging.
I guess we're just going there for this episode. Yeah, that's a well no for me. I think anytime like I could see how it's kind of clickbaity and being like, yeah, I'm gonna take this creatine without water, essentially. So people are taking it just either without water, or I've heard cases where maybe they're snorting it, which is just all wrong. Like
Uh,
all wrong. No, thank you.
Okay, interesting. People are snorting creatine. Well, I guess, we have, as I said, it's everywhere, and that's what happens.
Right? It's
Um,
like just because something is good doesn't mean we have to find different ways to get it into our bodies, right? Like there's always going to be that extreme. It's beautiful. I love the
well,
wellness world.
and I think sometimes these behaviors lead to incredible innovation, right? It's by accident
Yeah, sure.
that we discover things in science. I mean, that is the truth too, right? Like I think the biggest breakthroughs were actually, you know, unexpected results from other studies, if you will. So, maybe snorting creatine will lead to
Yeah.
something. Who knows? But
Yes, I love that. That's true. That makes me
not
think of
not
LSD.
not for now, not for now. All right.
But yeah,
Uh,
still a well no.
that's okay. But let's move on to our RD rapid fire. And again, we're gonna, talk about the topic of the day, and you rank like different activities in terms of like boosting your creatine, right? So I'm just curious where you are on these. So 0 is obviously not so good or pretty useless, and 10 is being the highest and the best, right? So let's do creatine RD rapid fire. Walking,
For boosting your creatine, the 4,
running,
4 or 5.
okay, fishing,
I mean, that's very peaceful and regulates your nervous system, but boosting creatine, probably again, 4.
Pilates,
A 5.
Pilates,
5.
weightlifting,
A 6.
creatine in your morning smoothie. I mean, it sounds pretty straightforward.
A 10.
All right, here we go. Now, this is what a good one. Creatine without exercise in your routine.
It's still going to be a 10.
So you would recommend for people to take creatine even if they weren't.
Yes, because of
Okay.
those cognitive benefits, sleep benefits. I mean, it's
Inter
going to be more effective if you're moving, but
yeah.
it's still going to have those positive impacts. And it'll be, yeah,
Okay. Hiking,
I think 4.
swimming,
I love swimming. We'll give it a 5.
and then suntanning with or without your clothes. It really doesn't matter.
A 3.
All right. That's all we had for today. So once again, thanks, Sarah. As always, that was super
Yeah.
insightful. And for those listening, if you like this podcast, please give us a like, drop us a comment with questions, and of course, do follow us if you have an extra second. I want to thank our producer Brooke and our production assistant Fatima for putting together this creatine episode. And as always, thank you, Sarah Greenfield, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much.